What's going on, guys? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to make a video talking about every current UFC champion's biggest weakness. Every fighter in the UFC has some sort of weakness, even the best of the best champions in the organization. I just want to break down what I believe is their biggest weakness, how it can kind of be exploited, and of how other fighters in the organization can be able to identify why this weakness is so apparent. If you guys enjoy the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. That is the best way to support the channel. And while you're down there, turn on the post notifications. I am so adamant about this always, just because it always keeps you guys updated with the most recent content that I release daily. If you want to stay up to date with the most recent news and content, please hit that post notifications button. You will thank me later for doing so. And lastly, please help us reach 1,000 subscribers. That would be absolutely amazing. That is my biggest goal. And it's only the way I can do it is by you guys smashing that massive red subscribe button. Let's jump right into the video of my top weaknesses for each current UFC champion. Okay, first champion I want to start with is Jon Jones, and I will be doing Tom Aspinall right after this because I do think that he deserves to be in this video too, even though he's just the interim champion. But Jon Jones' biggest weakness is just his age. Jon Jones, we all know, is the greatest fighter the UFC has ever seen, and truly his age right now is the big thing that's holding him back. In a possible fight with Tom Aspinall to unify the belt, I think he would ultimately lose that fight just because of him being a little bit over the hill now. You look at prime Jon Jones, if he was a heavyweight and bulked up during his prime, I do think that prime Jon Jones, with all of his different spinning attacks, his IQ, and everything that he does, would absolutely destroy Tom Aspinall in that standpoint. But Jon Jones is just older. There's nothing we can do about it. Age will always strike every fighter, and truly I think that Jon Jones' biggest weakness is going to be able to stay fit, stay hungry, and just stay young in a standpoint to where he can go in there and challenge with the best fighters inside the UFC organization. The next fighter I want to talk about is Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall's biggest weakness is easily his chin being up in the air. Tom Aspinall, if he fought someone, let's say like an Israel Adesanya, and this is just talking about pound for pound, not in the heavyweight division, he would get absolutely lit up because of how high he keeps his chin in the UFC. Now, it is one of those things that Tom Aspinall is super elusive to with. Yes, he can dodge punches, but there is only so much you can do and only so much a chin can take. If you fought someone, say, like Alex Pereira, he would find that chin very easily. Now, some of Tom Aspinall's other strengths can cover his weakness of keeping his chin so high up in the air. He's a great grappler. He's got great jiu-jitsu. He is just super smart. He's got a very high fight IQ. So we can use some of those things to cover up his chin being so high in the air. But I do think that Tom Aspinall's chin being up in the air is going to eventually be tested by someone who's a very strong puncher. We all know he has an amazing chin. He took a really hard shot from Sergey Pavlovich, but Tom Aspinall is going to have to fix his chin very soon. Otherwise, someone like an Alex Pereira or someone like that is going to come in and expose him and knock him out very quickly. Alex Pereira, as we all know, is one of the greatest kickboxers in the UFC, and his entire combat sports career background is from the kickboxing standpoint, but he is currently fighting in mixed martial arts, and he doesn't have that much knowledge in the ground department. Wrestling, jiu-jitsu, sambo, every little thing that you could talk about in the ground department, he doesn't have that exact knowledge in there, and that would easily be Alex Pereira's biggest weakness. Now, yes, it's a very easy thing to point out and talk about Alex Pereira, and he has developed a bunch of different strategies to help cover up his weakness, like that body jab that he was throwing against Jiri Prochazka, that deadly flying knee that he possesses, and just his IQ in working with Glover Teixeira on how to get up once he's getting on the ground. And he's super conservative when he gets on the ground, so he won't get submitted or he won't get grounded pounded very easily, but he just will lose the position battle ultimately. But Alex Pereira's ground game is 100% developing. He has a chance to become to be tolerable on the ground. He is never going to be one of the greatest jiu-jitsu artists you've ever seen, like a Charles Oliveira or someone like that, but Alex Pereira can hold his own on the ground. But someone who is bigger, like a Tom Aspinall, a Jon Jones, or possibly even a Magomed Ankalaev could really expose Alex Pereira in that ground department, and that is why Alex Pereira's ground game and ground knowledge and lack of it is the biggest weakness that he has. For someone like Dricus Du Plessis is a very well-rounded fighter, and there isn't a weakness that is super apparent just with one style of his game, him being bad at something or something like that. But ultimately, Dricus Du Plessis' biggest weakness is his tendency to overextend inside the octagon. That is going to get him seriously hurt by someone like Israel Adesanya, possibly. We all know that Adesanya versus Du Plessis is happening this weekend at UFC 305, and I am so hyped about it. If you have not seen my UFC 305 official predictions video, please go see that video. I will link it right here. But that is an absolute banger of a fight coming up, and I do think that Israel Adesanya has a chance to win because of his just great kickboxing ability and his counterpunching ability that can possibly be able to catch Dricus Du Plessis on one of those crazy blitzes that he has. Someone like Robert Whittaker, who has perfected the Reaper combo, quote unquote, which is his blitz that we've all quoted, which is his 1-2 high kick. Dricus Du Plessis does something similar without the high kick. He just does a bunch of punches, but he throws his chin in a bunch of predictable standpoints where I don't even think he understands where his face is going, which is a very bad thing when you're fighting such a precise striker like Israel Adesanya. But I truly do think that Dricus Du Plessis doesn't have a lot of weaknesses inside the UFC, but his blitzing ability, and not his effective blitzing ability, but where he keeps his chin when he does blitz, is something that could possibly get him very hurt and ultimately finish in the UFC very, very soon if he doesn't fix it. Belal Muhammad just became UFC champion at UFC 304 versus Leon Edwards in a very dominant grappling performance, but that leaves the other side of his striking department. Now, I think he was actually doing pretty good in the striking department against someone like Leon Edwards, but a lot of his other fights where his opponent doesn't get as flustered with the amount of pressure that he puts on is really going to show in his striking game. Belal Muhammad puts so much pressure on his opponents, and it really allows him to open up that grappling department and open that striking department if they get really just overwhelmed by the pressure. But Belal's striking in totality isn't that amazing. He doesn't know how to set up combos that great. He just doesn't. He throws out a bunch of just kind of shots with not a lot of power on them, and it is easily his biggest weakness in the UFC. So I think someone like a Shavkat Rakhmonov, who doesn't get flustered by the pressure, a Jack Della Maddalena, if they can stay on the feet, will have a very good time fighting someone like Belal Muhammad, because his striking game is still developing in the UFC. Even though he's been in the organization so long, that striking department needs to develop, and I think ultimately that is Belal Muhammad's biggest weakness in the UFC. Islam Makhachev is the pound for pound #1 fighter in the UFC, but I'm making this video and I want to break down Islam's weaknesses. And the only weakness I see in Islam's game is him knowing when to grapple and him relying on his striking too much. I think I have Islam as one of the best strikers in the UFC and one of the best grapplers in the UFC, but he is the best grappler in the UFC, in my opinion. There's no doubt in there, but he's not the best striker. So I think that, especially in that Dustin Poirier fight, he was standing on the feet and relying on his hands a little bit too much prior to then just going and taking someone down. When you have a grappling game that dominant and truly that amazing, you have to use it as much as humanly possible. Look at someone like Charles Oliveira. He always tries to jump guard, get someone on their back to ultimately engage in the grappling department. But Islam Makhachev has really been settling in that striking game, which does allow for some of his opponents to do pretty good against him. Even though he was beating Dustin Poirier in the striking, Dustin had no answer for him on the ground. As you saw, he got the darts in the 5th round. In that 1st round, he completely dominated the exchanges. But in the striking department, it gives his opponents a little life. And out of every little thing Islam Makhachev does, that would be his biggest weakness, of staying on the feet a little bit too long when he should undoubtedly take the fight to the ground. For Ilia Topuria, he just became UFC champion at UFC 298 over someone who is one of the greatest featherweights of all time in Alexander Volkanovski. And we all know that he's fighting Max Holloway in the main event of UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi. But Ilia Topuria's biggest flaw or biggest weakness is his lack of experience. Ilia Topuria has not fought some of the best featherweights in the world. Yes, he fought someone like Alexander Volkanovski, but that was a very favorable matchup for someone like Ilia Topuria because Alex's chin isn't that amazing, and Ilia is a very quality over quantity punching guy. So someone like that won't be able to take a punch like Max Holloway. All of the past contenders have fought Max Holloway, have fought someone like Brian Ortega, and have gone up the gauntlet of the featherweight division. Ilia Topuria is the one exception to where the only really big fighter that he fought prior was Josh Emmett, and before that, he fought Bryce Mitchell. Those are not the cream of the crop of the featherweight division, but I think that lack of experience is going to show possibly in this Max Holloway fight, where Max is super resilient. He throws a lot of output. He has so much cardio to where this could possibly be a massive fight for Ilia Topuria and him possibly losing. And that is why I believe that Ilia Topuria's biggest weakness is his lack of experience inside the UFC. Sean O'Malley is one of the best strikers in the UFC, but really, what could his biggest weakness be? Because his takedown defense is actually pretty good, but what I'm going to go with is Sean O'Malley's offensive grappling, everything besides jiu-jitsu, because Sean O'Malley's a pretty good jiu-jitsu submission artist, but Sean O'Malley's wrestling ability isn't that great. His sambo ability isn't that great. Mainly that's a Dagestani thing, but I do think that Sean O'Malley does possess great takedown defense and great striking and a lot of stuff like that, but the biggest gripe is he doesn't know how to get the fight to the ground. And that would be a good thing for him to know if he wants to switch up the pace a little bit. You look at Peter Yan in their Sean O'Malley fight. When Peter Yan was losing in the stand-up, he used a lot of trips and a lot of takedowns to get himself to the ground. And Sean O'Malley really doesn't know how to utilize those different techniques. He's a lot similar to someone like Brian Ortega, who has a really good jiu-jitsu game, but really hasn't had the ability to get the fight to the ground. So it's kind of really hard to use that jiu-jitsu when you don't have the proper ability to transfer the fight from the feet to the ground. And a lot of people don't understand of how good of a submission artist Sean O'Malley is because he never uses it. But if he really had the offensive grappling, everything besides jiu-jitsu, so the ability to transfer the fight from the feet to the ground, that jiu-jitsu ability would be put on display more often. And that is why that is Sean O'Malley's biggest weakness. For Alexandre Pantoja, he just defended his title at UFC 301 against Steve Erceg, which was a very interesting fight. A lot of people thought Erceg won, some people thought Pantoja won, but he's still the champion right now. And the thing I want to talk about is Pantoja's ultimate just gas tank that he has. Pantoja's gas tank is definitely his least valuable thing that he has and his most vulnerable thing that people can exploit. Someone like Brandon Royval had a lot of advantages in that final fifth round to where he actually won the fight, or won that fifth round, versus Pantoja just because he had so much more energy, he was so much more fresh. And not saying Pantoja doesn't have any will in those later rounds, but 100% out of everything that you could point at for Alexandre Pantoja, it would be his lower gas tank than some of these other flyweights. In flyweight, the pace is absolutely insane, so you have to have a great gas tank to be really competitive in the division. Pantoja's gas tank is all right, but compared to someone like a Brandon Moreno, compared to someone like a Brandon Royval, possibly even someone like a Tatsu Taira, that gas tank just isn't all that great. And I think that that is Alexandre Pantoja's biggest weakness in the UFC. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fights Is It MMA, and please let me know what you think down below in the comments about these top weaknesses for each champion currently in the UFC. I think every single fighter has a weakness if you look hard enough, and that is something that they can just improve on and something that you could possibly go in there and exploit in a fight with these said champions. I think that every champion has something to work on. No fighter is perfect. And ultimately, that is why I wanted to make this video, to show that even the best fighters like Islam Makhachev and Jon Jones have some sort of disadvantage and weakness in their game. But thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fights Is MMA. And please leave a comment down below if you agree with these rankings and these weaknesses. And please, while you're down there, turn on the post notifications and hit that big red subscribe button so you guys can help me reach 1,000 subscribers. That would be absolutely amazing if you guys could help me do so. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fights Is MMA, and I will catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.